Hello, you're listening to the Neil Lamptey Show. My name's Joey, and I'm joined this week by Paul.
Evening, mate.
And Neil.
Hello.
And KFC, Kieran Flipping Crowley. Well, what is your third appearance on here, is that right?
Third one, fourth one.
Did
I do 2 last season and the 1 season before?
Is it the fourth?
It might be the 4th. I feel like I've done this too many times either way, so that's fine.
Good start. We're hoping it's going to be as explosive as the last one that I think.
Let's hope so.
Memorable.
Yeah, I mean, it might actually give us something energetic to talk about if we can get into something like that, because I don't know about the rest of yous, but I don't feel that particularly energised about this. But let's not preempt things. Let's do some moments of the week. Neil, what was yours?
Aaron Martin, I think. Seeing him play well. I think more complex than that, just seeing a good player have a decent game.
Good stuff. Kieran, we have a vision of Aaron Martin now of world's loveliest man. Is that fair?
He's a very good guy, that's for sure. Obviously, with the stuff he did for the hospital, and just donating money out of his own pocket to do it, and being the community player of the month for January as well. Yeah. He's a great guy. I really, really love working with him, and he's just a genuinely good bloke. And the fact he looks like one of the best Argos catalogue models you could ever wish to hope for is obviously a big plus point.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, that's what he's got to be striving for.
I think his finest moment, actually, at the football club was when I made him wear the Christmas jumper to model it for the shop. And those photos still are the best photos we've ever taken at the club.
We're going to have to dig them out. What was so good about them?
Just
his face.
Aaron Martin in the doorway at Brighton wearing a Christmas jumper. Need I say more?
Yeah.
And it sold out.
Did it really?
Yeah, it did. Honestly, they actually sold out those Christmas jumpers.
I would.
And it's all down to Aaron Martin.
Or possibly just because people love to buy Christmas jumpers.
Yeah. I also got Lee Burge wearing it in the gym where he was working out in it, and he wasn't very happy.
You got Lee Burge in a what, sorry?
I got Lee Burge wearing the Christmas jumper in the gym, looking as though he was working out, like an action shot. Because obviously the Christmas jumper is for all times of days. So, yeah, he wasn't very happy with that.
That's strong work. I like it. Paul, your moment of the week?
I didn't realise at the time, and it wasn't until we listened to the post-match interview that I realised how blessed I was to watch that wonderful Swindon side. So my moment of the week was watching what possibly might be one of the greatest teams of all time.
As always, you're going to have to explain this.
Well, according to most of the people who rang in to CWR after the game, Swindon, I think someone even described them as a great Swindon side. Now, I could have sworn they were 14th in League One. But, you've got to take credit where it's due, and they were obviously magnificent, and I feel blessed to have seen them play.
You cynic.
I wouldn't say that for one moment, mate.
You bloody cynic. Okay, that's yours. Kieran?
Probably signing Jody Jones for me.
Oh yeah.
I think obviously on Friday that was a big thing for the football club, and I think in the future that will be a big moment look back upon for us really, because I think it's a good deal to have got done for the football club, and obviously made his impression last night in the under-21s, and I'm hoping for big things for Jody.
So explain more about that, because signing a bright prospect is something that we've done in the past. What's different about him, or what's different about this? Because you're talking about that almost like it's portentous as a thing that sets us up for the future. What, is it outside of him, or how? What does that mean?
Well, for me, it's the first kind of deal I've experienced at the football club where we've taken the initiative. We've seen that someone is obviously talented in the lower leagues. Something which fans of this football club have been asking us to do. Peterborough have obviously done so well over the years with the likes of Dwight Gale and going past it like George Boyd and etc. And we've got to start. I've always thought that we should have started doing that. And Jody is one of the brightest talents in League Two. We've been able to nab ahead of a few clubs, and obviously it was reported earlier in the year that Brighton and Charlton were after him, and these six-figure fees and all this sort of stuff. So we've been able to get him on an emergency loan, and a deal is agreed in principle. Obviously, that would include a fee, and I think that's something which, for me, it's one of the first times I've experienced at the club during my time that we've really taken the initiative to go and pick up a really bright talent, which can only be good. Really, it can only be a good sign for what we're doing in the future.
One, you're forgetting Stuart Urquhart. Two, what you were there on Monday for the kids' game, weren't you?
Yeah.
He scored 2, set one up. Is that right?
Yeah. So first goal, Jack. We put the highlights up on Sky Blue's player. The first goal, Jack, wonderful 60-yard pass out of defence. Found him on rushing line, and so turned inside the defender, curled it into the bottom corner. Then the third goal, just after half-time, he's out on the right, he skips past 2 defenders, gets to the byline, sets George up for a tap-in, and then the third goal was really quality. Ramirez won it back off Luke Ayling, who was dreadful all night, by the way. And then he slotted the ball into Jones, who checked back onto his left foot, skipped past the defender, and then somehow found the bottom corner from the edge of the area. 2 quality goals. The second one in particular was absolutely outstanding. But it wasn't just his goals and the assists as well. He was just really energetic, and he obviously has pace, but then he had his ball control was brilliant. He has the know-how to get past the player, and you can tell he's a player who has made 40 appearances in the Football League in this short time.
So how far away is he from the first team squad then?
Based on that performance, not far. I wouldn't say far at all, but I would say also that, he's obviously a young lad who probably needs a bit of time just to bed in. Also, the crucial thing is as well, the reason he was taken off after, was it 60 minutes last night, wasn't because he's done his job and we're preparing him for Friday. He's actually not played that much football lately because John Stills, obviously, they're in a relegation battle, and he wants to play men rather than boys and trying to get themselves out of trouble. So for the last month or so, he's come off the bench a few times. He hasn't played a lot of football, so you just got to manage that process and make sure we don't throw him in too soon, because obviously then he's just going to blow up, and you're just going to have a situation where you've got a player injured and on loan, and we don't need that again.
I'm kind of sorry, stealing this away. I know that we've got a 0-0 draw against Swindon to talk about. You mentioned George Thomas's name there, who scored against Fleetwood. No, it was right. He assisted Richard Wood to score against Fleetwood. Yeah. Then popped off to Yeovil. But we're about to go through a period where we've got no Adam Armstrong. How in the reckoning is George Thomas, or is it going to be Henderson, Fortune?
I think George, big opportunity for him last night. I spoke to him before the game, and he knew it himself. Really, I think I like George Thomas as a footballer. Against Bolton 2 weeks ago at Leyland, he was absolutely outstanding. And I thought, well, because he struggled with injury, he's had a few niggles. So in the midpoint of the season, and then I thought with Bolton last week, his performance was brilliant. Should have scored 2, had 1 blocked off the line. The other one came to him a bit too quick. Last night, excellent all-energy performance, created plenty of chances. He went in through one-on-one, I think 30 minutes gone, and he really should have just took it with his right, and he unfortunately took it with his left, and the keeper saved it. And I know I saw Tony sort of react to it with his head, sort of like his hands in his head and all that sort of stuff. But when they go back to training tomorrow, because I've had a day off today because they're going to do 2-game lead-up for the Friday game, George is going to have to be within the first team squad training, because obviously the shortages, and it's really up to George now to catch the eye, because what you would say about those 3 strikers, Henderson, Fortune and Tug guys, they're all very samey, they're all very win the balls in the air, but there's not much pace between them, whilst George could provide you that spark without Adam Armstrong. And look, like you mentioned the Fleetwood game, he has done that before for the first team, and whilst people will complain about the international call-ups and stuff, it's worth noting we've won every single game without Adam Armstrong and the international call-ups this season. So hopefully George can come into the reckoning within the next 2 days before Friday's match.
Is that true?
Yeah, Colchester, Fleetwood.
We beat We've been a shit Fleetwood side. We beat a shit Colchester side.
We beat Burton as well, didn't we? Was that?
Oh yeah,
it was. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, right at the very start of the season. So okay, we beat a decent Burton side as well.
Oh, okay. Well, there's a stat for you. I was gonna. I mean, I'm in the same as Neil. I hadn't thought about my moment of the week and was just going to go for Aaron Martin. I thought he had a really good game against Swindon. You kind of stole my thunder, but in a really sort of like not thunder,
lethargic way, really.
And not stealing way. Yeah,
take that.
Yeah, I feel slighted. He was what I would suggest was one of the few brighter sparks in an otherwise quite boring Swindon game. Neil, can you think of any other reasons to be cheerful?
Well, we're like benchmarking now, aren't we? I mean, I'm looking at these games and you kind of look back to the point where we were good and we're still sort of measuring against them, but there are elements of positives because we know we're dealing with like a fragile side, a really sort of, you know, they're quite brittle in confidence at the moment. So I'd say Saturday saw a more, not confidence before, but there was an improvement on the last time I saw them. There was an improvement in terms they were competing in the match. They were part of it was a pretty crap match, but they were certainly part of it. And I couldn't really split the sides from a sort of a competition point of view. They were both sort of in there with a chance of winning the game. I think Swindon probably looked more threatening in an attacking sort of means. They obviously had a lot more about them going forward, but I just feel like there was a slight improvement of what we'd seen recently, and you sort of couple that with the fact that we'd won the game before. We now haven't lost in 2 games. It's these small battles which are still we're clinging on to, aren't we? I mean, looking at the team intrigued me. The lineup. I mean, it was different. I think there was a bit of a discussion about what formation it was. I mean, my call was I felt it was 4-4-2, sort of a straight 4-4-2. What do you guys think?
Well, I tweeted Kieran before the game because I kind of looked at it and thought, will we go 4-3-1-2, which was kind of what I hoped. But Kieran, have you got some insight?
Yeah, it's pretty much 4-2-3-1 with Adam Armstrong just operating in behind Fortune. That was the system. But then I think in defence they do adjust almost to a 4-4-1-1. I must admit though, Tony said this before, there's not really much difference between any of them really, especially those two, 4-4-1-1 and the 4-2-3-1 really. That does not, certain movements might be different, but not really.
How do you see Adam Armstrong, Kieran?
Overall or lately?
Overall, I mean, I don't even mean necessarily sort of performances, but as a player, I guess what the heart of what I'm trying to get to is that a number 9 or a number 10?
I think he's a number 9 for me, I would say. I don't think the reason he's probably playing the number 10 role at the moment is to accommodate Marco, who's obviously the past 2 games, against Shrewsbury and Blackpool, he was obviously brilliant, so you can't drop him. And Armstrong coming off him, he has played that role in the past. I mean, he actually started the season out on the right wing, I think, against Wigan, didn't he? So, yeah. But he has developed into a number 9. I think the problem with Adam at the moment is that he is obviously short on confidence. He isn't making the runs of which he was earlier in the season. He's just sort of lost his way a little bit. I think that'd be a fair comment because he's obviously a young lad. It's his first season in top level of professional football or whatever, and he's making more appearances than he's ever made. And so he's probably feeling the pressure at the moment. So I think it's probably a good time for him to get away with England and just relax a little bit and maybe come back refreshed, because it's obvious it has been affecting him because he hasn't been himself obviously on the pitch. But the one thing I will say about Adam, actually, even though he hasn't performed well in terms of goals, the one thing which was noticeable about Blackpool and even Swindon and even Shrewsbury, all the way through this sort of barren run he's gone on, he does still work extremely hard for the team. And there was a couple of times at Blackpool in particular where he'd be running back into the corner and made several like crucial tackles like later onto the game. So he does still offer you that effort and that work rate, regardless of him being slightly off form, which actually you probably say certain others probably don't give you that. So that's probably credit to him.
Neil, sorry, I've cut you off there. You were talking about the formation and the setup, weren't you?
Yeah. I mean, I just want to pick on one point about confidence, actually, which I think is just so prevalent when you look at our team as a whole. I mean, usually you go through the course of a season and you can pick out players who are having crises of confidence and they're kind of not playing as well as you know they can do. And I think what's sort of most striking is that sits throughout our entire team at the moment. We've got a lot of players, even the very best ones, the flex, who you imagine can handle it in some form. They just, in Vincelot, Vincelot the other day, his first half was just atrocious. Nothing was going right for him, and that was solely down to confidence. It's not a quality thing. We know he's a good player. We know how good he can be, but he just became so aware of the fact that everything was going wrong for him. All it did was exasperate it, and he just had to try too hard, and that sort of was the thread throughout the team. Really, he had a lot of players who we know have a certain level of quality, but it just wasn't quite going right for them. And the only ones I'd say sort of stood out, and from a consistency point of view, I thought Lorentzen looked very steady at right back. I think there was no messing about with him. He looked completely sort of assured in his game, and if anything, I'd say he's maybe a little bit too reserved. I kind of feel like there's the possibility for him to actually push on a little bit more. He's got quite a nice stride about him. He's good with the ball at the feet. There's rarely a bad touch. I kind of feel like when he gets in those positions, he should be looking to iron up, at least like nudging past the defender or something. But no, all told, I thought he had a good game. Martin, as we've sort of mentioned, was just solid, really sort of solid in a clean sheet performance. And my favourite, Andy Rose, he ran well, didn't he? He did a lot of running. He was all right. I mean, I think I'm still umming and ahhing about his sort of genuine quality with the ball, but as a sort of a energetic midfield performance goes, I think he did everything that he could do to sort of have an impact on the match. Was it him who had the goal disallowed?
Yeah.
Has anybody seen the highlight? I didn't watch the highlights. I'm guessing that was offside.
Narrowly, very narrowly. Yeah. That
doesn't make me feel better. Okay, well, it was right. So we'll have that. But yeah, no, I thought he did well, and he was proving the real threat. I mean, on there, he had the measure of their left back, or beating every time up in the air, and he was just stronger than him. And I think he got took off in the end, their left back. But yeah, Andy Rose doing a good job, and I think I don't like to get into it, but I think the disappointment is still Joe Cole. He just doesn't seem anywhere close to being sort of fit enough to have the impact that his mind wants him to have. Any sort of burst of energy takes him into this sort of mode of recovery, which it's like 5-10 minutes of his game is just gone because he's just hands on hips, desperately trying to recover himself. And it's a shame to see it, really, because in these situations where he's got the ball, and he even showed it the other day, I mean, in tight situations, he's still got a good first touch. You can see his mind's working, but what's going on downstairs with those legs of his, it's not quite the same anymore, I'm afraid. So he had a disappointing day once more. And I think he came off about after an hour, didn't he, for Murphy, who tried to make an impact, but he was okay. I don't think he did. We expect more from Murphy, don't we?
I'd say so. Strangely, I feel like his form is picking up and going in the right direction, but still not quite to the heights that we'd seen previously.
He's tentative. I think that, and again, it stems from the confidence. He's not. Beforehand, it was the whole knock it and run, knowing he was quicker than these players. There's an element of doubt in his mind. You can see that when he gets the ball, and whereas before it was really impulsive play, he'd get the ball immediately, he'd be moving on forward with it. Now there's a second thought. It might only be a split second, but that's what not confidence does for you. It's making him think too much. And by the time he's had a thought, and maybe he thought, I'm going to take someone on, they've engaged him. They've made it very difficult for him to get past them. And when he gets into sort of a muscle race, he's not the strongest guy. He's very quick, but he's not the strongest guy. So it becomes hard for him. I think Maddison came on, and people are giving him grief, but I think I was happier with him when he came on the other day. Just again because I think there were more like individual moments of him trying to make things happen and that things actually coming off. It didn't all happen, and he was still weak on the ball, and he did give the ball away at points, and he was a little bit sort of lacking in concentration. But you did see moments in that second half where he was trying to link up with players and they were kind of on the same wavelength, but it just isn't working at the moment. So frustrating, but I mean, all told, I think 0-0 was fair from a. I think we competed with them okay. I think Charles Cook made some good saves. He was very controlled in goal, and we could have stolen it at the end with the big man Darius coming on, and I should have kept it down. That's what I think.
I thought it was a smashing save.
Oh, of course. I mean, it's just one of those where I was wholly expecting him to sort of slam it into the ground, one of those bouncers which the keepers can't read because it's right in front of them. But nice and high, gets his arm up, and then we were all sent home a little bit more excited than we probably would have been if that hadn't happened.
Any more to add on the Swindon game?
Stephen Hunt, has he got blonde hair now?
No, he's cut his hair and it's revealed like an almost sort of grey ginger underneath. It's the first time, it's the first time in his whole career he's cut his hair, and so no one really knew what was underneath, and it's sort of like a grey ginger. I mean, he actually looks pretty decent, to be fair. Especially
I couldn't tell from afar. I forgot my glasses, so I kind of thought it was Graham Norton. And then it was like someone revealed that it was Stephen Hunt, and then we all thought he'd dyed his hair. And right, okay, there's the story behind it.
Yeah, so I sort of want to buy him a Tudor sort of ruff. I think he looks pretty good with that on at the moment.
What's the impact of having him around been? There's this thing that he's a big joker and that he's a big whatever around the training ground. Does that live up in reality?
Yeah. He's a really, really, really good fella. Like he's obviously a huge personality, but he does give a lot of advice to the young lads up front. Obviously, he's probably coming at a time where their form has dropped off, and so he's always trying to encourage it, even when he wasn't around the squad around a few games. Because I think he started the Southend game, and then after that he sort of dropped off a little bit because we had a lot of players. But even then, he still makes sure that he's in and around the squad, and he's always someone who apparently pops up in team meetings and tries to suggest things. And when they're going off in their own sort of separate meetings with attacking midfielders, with Jamie Clapham, he's always trying to hand over advice to the younger lads as well. So, yeah, he's a big voice around the training ground, and he speaks to everyone, really. He's a really nice guy.
How much of a difference does that make? Because we heard that the departure of Jim O'Brien was, amongst other things, a desire to be further up north and whatever else, that he was disruptive. And I guess it's as much as we would love.
I think that's a strong word. I wouldn't call him destructive. I'd just call him Jim. Really, I think Jim's. I've got a lot of time for Jim. You know, he's a very passionate and emotional fella, and trying to get him to do his captain's column last year was a real hassle. You know, but look, Jim, you know, is very vociferous around, you know, in training on the pitch. But that really wasn't the main cause of why he went to Scunthorpe. The main cause of why he went to Scunthorpe was because he wasn't happy with the game time he was getting. He didn't want to be a bit part sort of thing. He felt he was at a time of his career where what is he, 28 now, where he wants to be playing every game, and obviously his contract up in the summer? Yes, it is. So he wants to be playing week in, week out, and Tony was quite honest with him and said, look, that probably isn't going to happen. Like, we've got other players in front of you, and then so he has to then leave and find some regular first team football. And Tony not wanting to keep him around in the sense that you have a player who's disillusioned or a player who will be unhappy sitting on the bench there, but granted him that wish. It wasn't a case of he's disruptive and he's throwing things around the dressing room and everything like that. He's not. He's a very good professional like that, but it more in the sense that, do you really want someone who's just going to be sitting there and unhappy in the dressing room all that time? And the answer is obviously no.
That's interesting, because the impression that
Here's one, Kieran. I have a question.
Ooh. Neil, go ahead.
I just have a question about that Instagram photo that he took of Biggie in his pants and Maddison on his phone. What happened there?
Yeah.
That got deleted.
It got deleted because not because of Madders, because of Biggie, because he's very religious and he doesn't like his body to be shown on social media.
That's a fair point.
That is the genuine reason. So
it was rather revealing. Yeah, we got the circumference of everything. So
I thought it was brilliant. That's why we tweeted out from the official account. But yeah.
That's a shame because Neil, I would have liked you to change your avatar back from Joe Cole to Biggie, but possibly in his pants. I take it that's not. That's going to ruffle feathers, then, yeah.
Yeah, no, unfortunately not.
That could be happening sometime
But
soon.
by the way, there's reports today that he's been selected for the Burundi squad. The Burundi squad. That's actually that call up as today at 4:00 was retracted, so he is available for us for the next few games or whatever. He's not going to be on international duty with Burundi.
Worldwide exclusive.
It is.
Yeah. How's Biggie been?
Yeah, good. Wait, right, he was brilliant last night. He was what he was against Bradford. I don't know if any of you went to that game, but Bradford away, he was exceptional on that night. For me, he was man of the match. He controlled the game from a deep midfield position. His passing was outstanding. Then since then, when he's been in the team, the question is, when you put him next to Fleck and Remain, does he really give you enough sort of around the entire pitch? And the answer is probably no. He probably needs to add a bit more energy to his game. He probably needs a bit of Andy Rose in him, because if you actually put his energy with Biggie's passing, you've got probably a Premier League player, because Biggie's passing, like he showed last night, on a wonderful pitch, he was picking 20-yard passes through the eye of a needle into the feet of every single player, and he just made it tick over. And I mean, Jody Jones took all the headlines because of what he did, but if you actually look at the highlights and if you look at the game, he was the player setting it all up. He was the one dictating play. So it was encouraging to see him play like that. He does need to pick it up though. He needs to pick it up in training. But I wouldn't be surprised if he could make an impression like that towards the end of the season, really, because that passing ability he has is quite scary at times. He just needs to, I think, add a little bit of energy and a bit of tenacity to his game and make sure that when he's in the defensive midfield position, he's more willing to tackle and doesn't let players get past him like he has when he's been in the first team.
Interesting. There's, I guess, so we've got a few questions, but I'm going to be selfish and ask one or two more here from our end. What goes through Joe Cole's head at the moment? So not talking about the future, but specifically, is this what he expected? Is League One what he expected? How does he sort of get on with the other players? Is there still a weird reverence for him? How does he fit into the setup?
Joe is just normal, really. It's quite strange. I mean, when you first had him down the training ground, there was like I always remember, I was taking photos of Joe in his first training session. And so then he went into like a group where Jim and John were, and they were trying to play keepy-uppies. And suddenly Jim and John completely forgot how to do keepy-uppies, and Jim was going bright red, and he was going, it's Joe Cole, how am I doing? So it's not like that anymore. He's just a normal footballer down the training ground. He comes and sits up in our office, reads the paper in the morning, has a cup of coffee, speaks to Oggy about football and about Lily Shaw back in the day and all this sort of stuff about what Oggy likes to reminisce about the past and all that. And then, out on the training pitch, obviously he's still giving the advice to the young ones, and he's obviously a lot more involved now. I mean, there was obviously a period, so he made the Rochdale debut. I think he played 1 or 2 games after that, and we sort of realised that he needed a mini pre-season. So Pauline, one of our physios, took him for about 3 weeks, I think it was, and drilled him and got him fit. He is fit now, or is as fit as he's ever going to be. And so I think he's made more appearances this season than he has since his time in France with Lille, which is quite a long time ago, of course. So, I mean, I know what you're suggesting, because I think, with Joe Cole, we were probably all expecting maybe to see a little bit more from him in terms of end product, I would say. I mean, like goals, more in particular. I think he had a great chance at Shrewsbury when Marc-Antoine Fortuny chested it down on one side of the pitch, and he found him out sort of completely free. And Joe Cole running onto it, and you think, well, he's got to score here, and he sort of skewed it wide. So I think we're all expecting a little bit more end product from him. I think he was probably expecting a little bit more end product from himself. I think if you speak to him about it, he's probably found League One a bit of a culture shock in terms of the sort of up and atom approach of certain teams and certain types of opposition. But he's enjoyed every moment of it. He's very thankful for what the club has done for him, really, because what we've done really is extend his career by a few more years, I would say, because I think he'll be able to play past this season and maybe even the season beyond that now.
Good stuff. Paul, Neil, any questions from you guys?
Paul, I'll let you take the floor if you got anything.
No, not really. Just. No, I'm sorry. I was just thinking about. I know we've gone past the Swindon game, but I was interested in listening to Neil's comments about Maddison and Murphy. And I know I'm taking it back like 20 minutes now. It was really interesting the fact we're still waiting for moments of magic, aren't we? And I thought, I agree with you, I thought Maddison was alright when he came on. But it's almost like unless we produce a moment of magic, we're not going to score at the moment. And it was just a bit frustrating from that point of view. And then it's a bit frustrating that, I don't know, it's just, I suppose Kieran sort of covered it, but I still find it frustrating that Jim O'Brien, we couldn't find a place in our first team for Jim O'Brien. Mm-hmm. We couldn't guarantee him more games when there are players who are not playing as well as him, who get in the team above him. And I saw Joe Cole on Saturday, and if you go back to one of the early pods, you know my reverence for Joe Cole. And it's just, I feel it's a bit of wasting everyone's time at the moment, watching him play on the left midfield for Coventry or left wing for Coventry, just looking out of place and not looking like he's actually influencing the game. And then you see Jim O'Brien, I don't know, it's all context, and Jim O'Brien's uber pass through Paddy Madden's goal on the weekend. And, you know, it's just, that's what we're lacking at the moment, that ability to play those passes. And one thing I sort of disagree with Kieran on earlier, when he said about Armstrong's not making the runs, I felt on Saturday he made the run 4 or 5 times, but just no one looked to pass to him. And you could see he was getting frustrated. And it must be hard when you're a striker and you have the start of the season that he had and all the plaudits, and then suddenly the goals dry up. But also, I feel like the supply lines just dried up for him, and it must be frustrating when you look around and you think, at one point I was having Lemares and Jim O'Brien laying the ball on the plate for me, and now I've got, you know, it's no offence to Andy Rose, but he's not really in their class when it comes to playing that final ball, and I didn't really feel like Fortuna linked up with him particularly well either. So I feel really sorry for Armstrong at the moment, because I can see why, in the context of him playing lots of games and having his first major sort of drought goal scoring wise, looking around and not seeing the players who are getting the best out of him at the start of the season. And I think that it would irritate me if I was in his position, when you think I'm not getting those passes anymore. No one's looking to release me in the way that they were. And it's not due to lack of heart or desire from him. It's just lack of the way that we're trying to use him. And I think, you know, I suppose around the squad at the moment, they must like Ricketts came out in the press today and went, we think, you know, we've overachieved.
Oh.
I don't know what Kieran thinks, but from a fan's point of view, you look at that and you look at that statement from the club captain, and you think that's almost giving them an excuse now to go, well, if we don't make the playoffs, well, we sort of overachieved anyway. I think he means it in the sense that I think that quote was sort of referring to what he was referring to, where this club was last season to where they are now, and he feels like we've made significant progress, which we have. Now, obviously the caveat to that, and I know what you're going to say, and I know what people are thinking, is that with the opportunity we afforded ourselves earlier in the season, November, December, being up in the top 6, etc., or even top 2 at that point, you know, at the moment, obviously outside the playoffs, and if we finish outside the playoffs, it would be disappointing. Yeah, I think it would be disappointing. I think all the players would be disappointed with that. I think Tony and everyone at the club would be disappointed. I don't think there's any two ways about that. But I think there's 2 separate sides to that. So the short term
sort of look of it, we'd be disappointed with not making the playoffs if we don't make the playoffs. I think we still can make the playoffs. I think if you look at April, it's a huge month with all those big games. We'll be able to take points off the teams around us. There's teams we've played really well against this season. The short-term view, we would be disappointed with not making the playoffs. However, the long-term view, I think this is where Sam's referring to, is that, and like what Tony sometimes referred to, is about building the football club. He feels that the progress has been made this season in certain respects, and it definitely has. Like from where we were at the end of last season on the final day at Crawley Town, the club has grown. It has got better. I think that's what they refer. There's two different sort of the short term and the long term. We'd be disappointed in the short term, obviously, but with the long term, I think there's still progress has been made, and it would go down as a progressive season, not a good season if we didn't make the playoffs, but a progressive season for the club.
But how can it be a progressive season when there's only about 5 players who are actually contracted?
So then it'd be a progressive season because, well, obviously we're already looking at signing players now, so we've done that with Jody Jones. It'd be a progressive season in the sense that next year, actually, if you look back on the squad last year, we're going to have more players signed up on contracts at the end of this season than we did last season. That obviously is counting in the 21 players, but obviously that counts as well. So we're going to have a bigger squad than we ever have before. We're going to have a bigger under-18 squad, we're going to have a bigger under-21 squad, and then they're already making progress with signings in the summer. They're already looking at trialists. There's been plenty down the training ground already. They're already making... So it's going to be progressive in the sense that there's going to be a bigger pool of players in the summer for the club to choose from, for the club then to... And with better contracts. Because one example we've got to use is Barnsley. Barnsley have about 6 players on 3-year contracts, and they're all worth so much money. Alfie Mawson, he's on a 3-year deal from Wickham, and Josh Scowen as well. They was signed up from the lower leagues and then brought to there. That's the example we've got to start taking. So, and that's like with Andy Rose, that was sort of done. And so I think it's that progression is there. I think it has happened actually. I think the overall quality of the playing staff has definitely gone up.
I just think the overall quality of the playing staff that we own is, I know we talked about this in the last season. It's like we've got all these kids, and that's great. I'm not, I'm really positive that, but also I remember 5 years ago when we had, or how many years? 3 years ago when we had all those kids coming through, and the only one who's still here. Well, Jordan Willis is still here, but he's missed most of the season with injury, and Connor Thomas is still here, who's missed most of the season with injury, and this season hasn't been through to lack of players. We've played about 36 different first teamers this season. We don't have many players, and by the looks of it, if we're talking about having all those under 18s and under 21s, what to get teams promoted, it seems, out of this division, especially this season, if you look at it, I think most of the Swindon team are like 22, 23, 24. Most of the Burton team are in that range group. Most of the Wolves team. And it's, for me, looking at this season, the only positive that is different from this time last season is Reece Charles Cook. Because he's the only player who's come through who's really developed this season, who's made massive strides forward. And, I have my question marks over him. I thought on Saturday he really showed how he's matured into the role as first choice goalkeeper.
Yeah. I thought he was brilliant at Blackpool as well. He caught everything.
Yeah.
That's great. Other than that, I don't see... I mean, even people like Jack Finch got more game time last season than they are this season. And I find it interesting, like the Joby Jones one is, he's played 40 first-team games. Cargill had played virtually none, yet was dropped straight into the first team. It's like, this kid, if he's that exciting...
I saw you make that point on Twitter. I explained that earlier in the recording, that he hasn't played much football recently, so
but there again, neither had Stephen Hunt, and he was dropped straight into the first team as well. It's, at the moment...
Yeah, but Stephen Hunt's been training with the squad for at least 3 weeks before that.
No, that's fine, but... looking as a fan at the moment,
he played in the under-21s game, like the 2 days before it, and played 80 minutes at Crewe. So there was a reason for that.
But I think you look at it and you think, what the Cleveland need now is a spark from somewhere. They need talking as a fan. You look at it and you think, what I really want now is something to make me excited again.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and
it's just this kid is. I mean, I'm not saying start him against Peterborough, but it was almost sort of sold as we brought him into the development squad and we'll have a think about it. And it's like, well, if he's that exciting, play him. I just sort of say that we are going to try and unleash him between now and then.
I think there's the caveat to that though is that if you sort of go out and say, well, we're hoping he'll make an impact in our first team straight away, you got to realise most people didn't know who he was when we were released, and most of the reactions to that signing was actually who is this player, etc. So if we go out and say, well, we're going to put him in our first team straight away, fans who don't know who he is will turn around and go, hang on, we're signing Dagenham and Redbridge players and then throwing them straight in our first team. What the hell is going on? And then the second bit of that would be if we went out and said, oh, we want him to play first team, he might read that and the fear of God might be put into him. And so then the only real way of marketing that sign is to say it is one for the future because it's an 18-year-old from Dagenham and Redbridge. Now, with that performance on Monday, the other night, I would say that he's probably given himself a really good platform to then go on into first team training and maybe get himself in the squad on Friday. Or not maybe Friday, but past that.
But isn't there also an argument of sort of, okay, you're saying, with Dagenham and Redbridge in quite a dismissive term. It's like, well, at the end of the day...
No, I'm not dismissing them, but you know what most of our fans would say.
Chris. At the end of the day, so I know what most of our fans would say, and I don't agree with most of our fans most of the time. So it's a case of, this kid's obviously, he's played 40 first team games, he's played a lot of games this season, he's not raw. Yeah. We brought in, like Ryan Kent was raw, he came from Liverpool, but he was a lot rawer signed from Dagenham and Redbridge. And it's sort of a case of...
You can't... I don't think... If we went out and said, this player's going to play on Saturday and we're getting him in the first team picture straight away, a player no one's ever heard of, a player who isn't from a club... So most supporters, when they see Ryan Kent, he's from Liverpool, he must be really good. And he was really good, but, he must be really good because he's from Liverpool. He must be really good because he's from Newcastle. He must be really good because he's in the Premier League. If you take a League 2 player who's on the bench in League 2... take him up to League 1 and then say, look, we're going to play him in our first team, you're going to get slaughtered.
It's what happened with Chris Stokes, isn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, the Chris Stokes element obviously was obviously much different.
No, but what I mean...
We had nothing else at the time.
No, but to your point, is that when the people around me, when he was making his first appearances, were grumbling and saying he wasn't even playing for Forest Green a few weeks ago. So I understand your point about you're allied into nothing. If you start saying, but I think the problem with both of you's arguments is it's almost inconsequential because you can't please all the people all the time, can you? I can understand attacking it any number of different ways, but do we have to scrutinise these communications to death?
No, all I'm saying is, my point was, if he's ready and he's good enough, then he should be around the first team squad.
But you don't know that.
No, I don't know.
But he is. He is.
But
Paul.
What I'm saying is we sort of, at the end of the day, we can't make decisions over the fans going, he's only from Dagenham and Redbridge.
No, we're not. But he is around the first team picture.
And I'd like to see him given a chance.
So would I.
And that's where that's what sort of saying at the start was, I want to see, he's the sort of player, if we are going to start progressing next season with players from, obviously we're going to be bringing in a lot of players. For me at the moment, he seems like the sort of player who I'd like to see given a chance and brought into the first team, and it was sold as a different thing, which I agree with Joey's a different argument. Therefore, let's hopefully, by the time we play Colchester, it might be the sort of thing, the way Colchester's playing, might be the sort of thing worth having him on the bench. Because if the game's a bit flat, I think the fans are, the fans, whether or not it's from Dagenham and Redbridge, think they are quite excited by having a young, quick, talented player.
Yeah.
I think very easy thing to sell. Because fans do like exciting players, especially when they feel like they're at the start of their career. And
I think especially after last night as well, because obviously the performance was outstanding. But I think he probably would have needed that sort of game in the under-21s to sort of prove that sort of ability he had as well, not just to the fans and to the people looking at our Twitter feed, but also to the playing staff around him, and so the rest of the players last night would have seen just how good he is in the match. And that sort of word spreads throughout the squad, and then the sort of next day in training, people are looking at him going, "Oh, well, this is now a serious contender for the first team squad." I'm not saying he might not. I think he's got every chance of getting into that squad for Friday, and I know for a fact Tony's thinking about it long and hard right now. So it'd be an interesting one to see, because I think you're right. I think the team does need a spark. I think Jacob hasn't supplied it in the past few weeks, maybe even a month. It's been off the boil. His anticipation isn't what it was. He seems to be on his heels quite a lot when the ball comes near him. Doesn't seem to see the pass and doesn't see the run as quickly as he used to. Look, I think it just happens sometimes with these young footballers. I think this is his first full season. I know he's had a lot of loan spells. This is the first full season long loan, if that makes any sense. So he's obviously played consistent football at our club for the first time. And so I think these things are going to happen. It's just, will he come back before the end of the season? I think so. We just have to be patient with him.
We're talking about Jody Jones here, and let's see if you can tell that I'm keen to move this on. We've had a number of questions about the kids coming through. So there is a perception, certainly, that you have more access than we do, and I think that's true. But can you shed any light on who we might be expecting to see, as in ones for the future?
Well, obviously, you obviously know about George, and obviously we spoke about Jody quite a lot. Other players for me, more recent. So in the midpoint of the season, if you look at the under-21s results, they suffered a lot of injuries. So Ivor Lawton, Jack Finch, Ben Stevenson, Devin Kelly-Evans were all ruled out. So we played a lot of under-18s up the ages. So now those players have come back. Unfortunately, Ivor hasn't, because he's out for the season, which is a real shame, especially after making his first appearance for the club. Ben Stevenson has come back and really impressed since that. He's a box-to-box midfielder who likes to play on the ball. His passing is exceptional. And in the time when James Maddison was coming up through the youth team, it was the Ben and Madders sort of show, and they were sort of the ones to play with. So Ben Stevenson's definitely one to look out for, I would say. Obviously, a lot has been made about Kian Harries. His passing ability out of defence is unquestionable. He always comes after a game and hopes that he's got a 100% pass rate. The other side of the game he needs to add to it is obviously the defending, really, and the ability to be able to attack the ball and to be attack players. And I think that will come with a bit of time. The more he grows and the more he adds strength to his game, and which he will need to do. But his talent on the ball is exceptional. And then you look at others you're looking at, you would say Dion Kelly-Evans, always reliable, right back, left back, centre back, defensive midfielder. He doesn't let players past him. He's tenacious in the tackle. Devon's just the same. When them two combine, they're exceptionally good. And then if obviously I have access to the under-18s as well. One to look out for me, the amount of improvement this lad has made. Callum Maycock, especially in the Youth Cup run. He's absolutely exceptional, really. 2 years ago, you looked at him and you thought he'd never have a chance. And now he's a combative midfielder who just puts himself about. He's really one for the future, I think. Hopefully, if he takes up the offer, we've obviously offered 6 of them a contract. Hopefully next season in the under-21s he can take that chance and progress further with it. But the individual qualities of certain players in the under-21s groups has been really impressive this season.
Good stuff. Question here from Tom Alves asking whether there is a noticeably different atmosphere around the club since the Gillingham game, I guess, is the point he's making. It says compared to before Christmas between the players. Anything at all? Is it the stuff that's come out has been that it's largely positive? Is that the case?
Yeah, people have asked me this about like what's the change and what's happened and all this sort of stuff. They're very, very much the same, really. The one thing they're probably having a little bit more is they're having a few meetings. They're looking back on the tapes a little bit more. They're looking into the last game a little bit more. They always do that, but what they're doing now is they're doing it in sort of groups to try and magnify the little things to make sure the bigger picture obviously gets better, which is a really good thing to do. I think the analysis stepped up, and hopefully that will make an impact in the next few games. But generally, the atmosphere hasn't changed. It's a really good squad of players. It's not like last season when you had players leaving as soon as training was over, escaping the training ground because obviously of where we were on the table, the fact we had so many nomadic players who even I probably can't remember now, sort of going in and out of the training room. You have a really good nucleus of a squad. They're all there's no divisions in it, and they all hang about the training ground as much as possible. And no, it's a good place. It's a good environment to work.
What do you put the decline down to?
Say again?
What do you put the decline down to?
The decline. Again, I've been asked this many times on the wall. It's a difficult one. I think it would be. I mean, it's a combination of things, really. So obviously, I've mentioned the fact that you got a lot of young players, so they obviously will inevitably have a dip in form. I think obviously the squad got bigger as well, so that might have had an impact on certain players, maybe looking over their shoulders and maybe their confidence being knocked. But other than that, I don't think there's. It's not like they're doing stuff differently in training. They're not like doing things that, we're not serving them different food. They're still getting served the same rice pudding on a Friday, which they were at the start of the season. There's still the training. It's still exactly the same. There's still the same tenacity in training. I think maybe you look on. I don't know.
Do they get rice pudding?
Yeah, rice pudding on a Friday.
Yeah, that piqued my interest. What else is the standard diet for from the canteen?
Canteen. Dino, the chef, makes some wonderful like roast chicken sorts of like Thai roast chicken things, where they're like separate roast chickens on their own, which is really nice. He makes a lot of
the players eat a whole chicken, a whole roast chicken.
Enchiladas are really good. Really enjoy them. Then. Sometimes we might have, like a lot of salmon. There's a lot of salmon. There's a lot of chicken cooked in different ways. It's really good. It's really good food for the players. From what I gather, other players who've been around League One and lower Championship, it's actually some of the best they've ever been served. So apparently we've got that going for our club apparently. There's a bit of insight. Anyway,
yeah, there you go.
I really fancy some rice pudding now.
Yeah.
I think I've got a can in the cupboard.
Oh, something has changed actually. With the rice pudding, we're serving Nutella with the rice pudding rather than the jam previous. So actually, if you want to put anything down to the poor form, it's the servings of Nutella on a Friday lunchtime.
Kieran, why didn't you lead with this info? This is
yeah.
This is.
Because I knew Andy Turner only listened 10 minutes in for the headline.
So, going back to, is Mowbray concerned that this is happening to him again? Because obviously he did mention this in his interviews, was the fact that, this isn't the first time this decline out of the playoffs has happened to him. It happened to him twice at Middlesbrough.
Yeah.
Obviously you went through the process of the years where I think up to about 20 games in or 25 games into the season, Mowbray and Presley's first season was pretty much game for game result similar, and obviously Presley had the Sixfield move and the 10-point deduction, and then obviously the Leon Clark sale and Callum Wilson injury, and then we obviously went through the farce of having 20,000 loan players who most of us can't remember and thankfully don't need to remember. Is Mowbray sort of questioning why it's happened to him again, and how?
No, I think the way Mowbray. So I mean, you'd have to. Well, Tony. So for him to question why it's happening again, he'd have to view his whole stint at Middlesbrough completely differently to what he does, because you speak to Tony about his time at Middlesbrough, and actually he is right in what he says. He went there after Strachan went there, and he was landed with a whole group of players on 3-4 year contracts. A lot of money wasted down the drain on those players who didn't really want to play for Tony, like Scott McDonald and McManus and all these sort of types. The players he previously got rid of at his former club Celtic, funnily enough. And so then he was landed with these players, so half the squad was almost unavailable to him. So he doesn't really see it as though this season decline in the second half of the season happened. I know a few people have mentioned that, but I obviously, you all know, obviously I'm a West Brom fan. I remember him winning the championship, and there was no mid-season decline there. I don't think it's a Mowbray thing. I don't think you can pin it on the manager. I think there's just accumulation of things. Maybe, the two things I've mentioned previously, and then maybe Coventry's teams need to start learning how to play in winter as well, because it always seems to happen around the pitches getting bad. It was the same with Steve Presley. It was just exactly the same. We don't seem to be able to cope with that midwinter sort of thing. Again, I don't know if you can pin it on one particular thing. People have asked me all the time. I mean, asked it now. I don't know. It's
just quite funny, because I sort of agree with you. So you can't really pin it just on Mowbray. You can't just pin it on the fact that every single Coventry City squad gets crap around Christmas, because that's been like 30 managers, thousands of players. It's just.
Well, it's only relative to my experience of the football.
Oh yeah, I mean, it has been happening since I've been going, which is like nearly 30 years. But at the end of the day, that shouldn't be something which we can accept as, well, it's Coventry, so they always go crap around Christmas. It's like, that system has to break. And we all thought that was going to break this season when we were top and brilliant. And, subsequently, it hasn't been brilliant, and it's been a bit, I think, I don't know if you went to the Barnsley game, I'm assuming you did.
Of course.
That could have been any Cov game under any manager with any set of players I've been to over the last 10 years.
It was awful.
And I know someone who tweeted about the Swindon game that they felt the same, where it was, this is back to being a bit typical Cov, where it was quite a poor game, and we only really had one shot in the penalty area, and that was in the last minute. It wasn't, considering how important the game was, because we'd have won it, we'd have been back in the playoffs. The lack of urgency, I thought, from both sides, I'm not just accusing Coventry of this, considering how much the game meant to Swindon, I was very surprised by how the lack of urgency it seemed to for both sets of both sets of players. It was quite odd, the sedate pace it was played at, and
yeah. I mean, that's the one thing for this season you've got to admit as well. Like, if Reader Johnson had stayed fit and not got the freakiest injury of all time, and Ben Turner then didn't land on his other knee, which he hadn't injured, and then that messed up, and even Bailey Cargill, if those injuries had stayed clear, we would have been right up in the top two, I would have thought, especially with the way Reader was playing at the start of the season. So there has been that impact there as well. I think if you look back on the season, there's going to be so many contributing factors to this mid-season dip. If we had a consistent defence and didn't concede the goals we did over that period, where Reader Johnson was in that team and Aaron Martin next to him, Reece Charles Cup, where we set that the clean sheet record, then undoubtedly would be much higher up the league right now. And so I think if you're going to say any factor, I would say that's the huge factor, I would say. But the fact Reader Johnson got and I know people say, well, we should have expected it because he's had an injury record. Well, actually, this season was different because he made 15 straight appearances or whatever for the first time in his career since he was first coming through in France. He was a completely different attitude. Training was different, and it was a completely freak injury where the tendon snapped off his bone of his hamstring. He doesn't have a history of that. That's never happened before in his career. And so if that happened, wasn't it? It was so he just hyperextended it. So the player sort of came across him and pushed out his calf, which meant the leg sort of pushed forward whilst it was jolted into the ground on the stretch. It was never going to happen ever. It's a 1,000,000 to 1 chance that was going to happen, and yet it happened. And if that never happened, then we'd be talking about a whole different season, I think, now. I know you can't pin it on certain things, but I think that would be my major one. But anyways.
Final points then. So, I had one here, but I've lost it, so I'm going to waffle about until... Oh, a question here from Ian Morris. What happened to the official podcast? I think I know, but go on.
Obviously, the competition was too good. No, I'm only joking. Obviously, it wasn't. It's a joke. It's a joke. All right.
Say what you mean, Kieran.
No, I'm joking. No, so obviously, it was a two-man media team when we started it. Me and Matt. Actually, Matt's probably listening to this. Matt's now down in Bournemouth enjoying the Premier League. Hope you're happy down there, you snake. I'm joking. He's a good lad. But yeah, so we did that and we started it up. So obviously he left, and then it took me a month to bring someone else in, and that person's currently sort of getting her foot in the door, if that makes any sense. So hopefully we'll bring it back soon. Hopefully maybe for the last few games of the season. So yeah, that's sort of explains it.
Good stuff. Have we got any other final points from Paul or Neil before we wrap things? Well, before we do the world's shortest Peterborough preview and then go from there.
No, I'm right.
Okay, cool. Kieran, anything that you would like to add? We'll bombard you with questions. Perhaps you would like to take a soapbox at this point, or have your say.
No, I haven't got anything prepared, but look, I think the final thing I would say is that we're obviously it's not gone. This mid sort of season term hasn't gone as what we would have expected if the first part of the season was anything to go by. But we are still only 3 points. It's 2 points outside the playoffs. We've got a great chance to achieve something a team hasn't achieved at this football club for 45 years or whatever it is. Ridiculous record. So I just hope that, the club is trying to run certain ticket offers, and I hope for the end of the season that we continue to just get the crowds we have, because it's been brilliant to see more people at the Ricoh Arena this season, especially after the 7,000 average rate last year. And I just hope that the progress can keep being made and people keep faith in what we're trying to do at the club, really.
A lovely sentiment to finish on if we weren't then doing, as I say, a very, very short Peterborough preview. Peterborough, 16th in the league, in the most League One club in League One as well, I would suggest. An odd team, capable of being very good or very poor. They have, at the moment, been on a run that would suggest they're very poor. They won at the weekend, but that was their first win in 8 games. They haven't won any of their last 6 at home, and aren't doing much better away. We've won 2 of our last 6 away, but I think we are hopefully starting to show some signs of life a little bit. 2 clean sheets and the re-emergence of Aaron Martin hopefully puts us in some good stead. They, curiously, for a team in 16th, have a goal difference of +2, and that is sandwiched between -13 of Bury and -10 of Shrewsbury. So they've got a handful of players who are capable of putting the ball in the back of the net. Chief amongst them, Marcus Maddison. He's got 11 goals this season. But that John Taylor's got 8, Lee Angol's got 7, Jermaine Anderson's got 6. This isn't, hugely impressive numbers, but actually that's quite a good number of players to have got goals for them, or in reasonably significant numbers.
I'm scared stiff of Madison's free kicks.
Oh, okay.
Wobblers.
Yeah?
He knows what he's doing. And who was everything? Was it Lee Burge was in the goal last time he scored? Yeah. I see in the warm-ups, he's got the technique down to a T. So anything outside the edge of the box, I am going to be worried.
Oztumer as well, who scored that goal, was quite an incredible strike.
The little man.
If anything, at Peterborough, I must admit, that 45 minutes, that first half they had at the Ricoh, that was the most impressed I've been ever at this level of football. That whole performance was incredible. That 45 minutes. What happened after that is a different story, obviously. But
we blazed them, didn't we?
Yeah, that was a great day.
We talked about him last week, actually. He came up when we were sort of briefly going through players in League One that had impressed us, that Ehan Oztumer. He was really, really, really impressive, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was...
is it Chris Forrester as well? Because when he actually came off, and Collison came on, who obviously couldn't move anymore and is now obviously retired, the game changed on that, because Forrester went off. Forrester was brilliant on the day. So there's got so much talent throughout that team. And obviously what he does there is he brings the players up and gives them a chance and then sells them on. You can tell it obviously works because the amount of talent of what's there.
Do you remember the episode, this might seem like a non sequitur, which it surely is, but does anyone remember the episode of The Simpsons where Marge got the pretzel wagon and at the end the competitors had set that sort of group of fighters on them? Yeah. And then it was the little guy where there was like, well, I know that little guy is going to do something. That's the Simpsons equivalent of that. That's
And they go in and then
They
suddenly you
set
hear
up
it.
the opposition sets up the kebab sort of one. Which
That's
goes
exactly
round.
right. Yeah,
And they've got the guy hiding in the kitchen who they're trying to shut off.
yeah, absolutely. That's Erhan Oztema.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's probably all the Peterborough preview we're going to bother with, and we don't do predictions anymore because that's so passé. Yeah,
Yeah.
Joey,
7-0.
Paul.
which obviously we're listing 3 players due to international call-ups.
They're missing
I
4.
Oh no, because I thought Biggie was the 4th.
No, sorry, they're missing 4.
Yeah, are they 4 sort of first teamers, good first teamers, important first teamers? Do you know? Do you care?
Let me just check my notes. No,
Sound
no
effects.
fucking idea, mate.
Zakwani's missing. I know that much. Obviously, he's in Congo, but I don't know about the others.
No, I'm afraid I don't know that far.
Forrester's a Northern Irish international, so he might be missing.
A final point of note, and I don't know whether he's on international duty or not. I specifically like the superhero name Harry Beautyman, but I can't confirm whether he is away or not.
Is Lawrenson, or however you pronounce his name, fit? Because in his post-match interview, Mowbray said he was injured, and then finished the same sentence by saying he was not injured. So
Yeah, he was. But he was asked, what's the injury to Martin Lorenzen? I think Martin's just because he's come from a league where it's just nowhere near as intense as it is here. He's just struggled to get up to the speed of it. So I think he felt that he was getting tight and that he needed to come off. I think if anything, it was just cramp. So I think he'll be fine for Friday.
I've remembered the better moment of the week. It was
what?
on the way up in the car, and Clive Eakin called him Mark Lawrenson.
That'll happen.
It's like, okay, yeah, good one.
Yeah.
And then the guy behind me calls him Lorenzo. Why? It's not that hard, is it?
No, not that hard at all. Okay, any very final thoughts before we wrap this bad boy up?
Nah.
That sounds like a no to me. Oh yeah, go on.
do you start Henderson?
Is that what? Sorry, was that? Do we start Henderson?
Would you? Yeah, because obviously Armstrong isn't going to play, and obviously without Armstrong, even though he doesn't score that often away from home, we don't have that many goal scorers in the team. Well, I'm assuming Murphy's going to come back in. Do you start Henderson?
Let's have one-word answers on this. I'll go first.
No, I'll bring him on.
Probably not, because he only really, he's only got the fitness ready for 20 minutes, and the last time he started a game was, I think, like Leyton Orient, which was about a year ago, so no.
Paul?
No, because we haven't got any wingers, so it's not much point, but no.
Okay. And that is done. Could I safely move on?
Yeah.
Address. Yeah.
Someone please put a bullet in this. If you want to get in touch with us, email address is neelampteyshow@gmail.com. Twitter is @neelampteyshow. Kieran, it's been a pleasure as always.
Thanks for letting me come on. Really enjoyed it.
Nice one. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Neil.
Thanks,
Yeah,
babe.
cheers, mate.
And thank you for listening, listener. Bye.